Thank you for joining. So let's start this FAIRsFAIR workshop, supporting the uptake of FAIR data teaching and training. So the main idea is to share some of our main results in this activity. We discussed a bit in our team if we should do this meeting or not. So we realized that it was important. So some of you have joined some previous workshop. Several of you have contributed a lot to the outputs and to the achievements of FAIRsFAIR in terms of activities related with the competences and curricula within the activities of work package 7 in FAIRsFAIR. So we thought that, okay, at the end, we are coming to an end of this project. It's really important to share these results, also to get feedback from you, also to check what we expect in terms of uptake of some of our main results, the dissemination of some of our main results. This is our objective here, and even discuss a bit about the how to sustain some of these results as they are now part of the community, and you are the community. So this was the main idea for this workshop. So we are recording this workshop. Recordings and presentations will be made available in the FAIRsFAIR website. There is a specific page. If you can check it in the event menu, you will see the specific page for this event. Feel free to ask questions. So we don't have the Q&A to ask questions. This is a normal Zoom meeting. You just need to post your question in the chat, or if you want, just raise your hand and speak. So this is what we really also want. Feel free to interact with us. So use the FAIRsFAIR social media. So the FAIRsFAIR hashtag if you want to share something about this workshop. Feel free also to visit the FAIR Data Forum in fairdataforum.org. We have also some comments and some contributions from previous workshops, also from the training activities. It's not really fully populated with content, this forum, but I think it's an interesting also output, apart from all the other outputs that we have also available in FAIRsFAIR. There is at least 2 pages with some of the contents that we have. So feel free also to visit that here in the menu FAIR landscape. You will see the FAIR in higher education and the FAIR frameworks and training programs. You will see some of the results that we are going to present here. Of course, also under the Competences Center, there is also training related information. So about this specific workshop, our main idea was to highlight the results. In terms of deliverables, main achievements from this specific area of the FAIRsFAIR project. So we had some deliverables and milestones within this activity. So in fact, we organized 3 university workshops, also workshops with different stakeholders. We did it with LIBER, we did it with Open Air, we did it during the Open Science Fair, and we have organized 3 university workshops. That some of the content of this workshop was really useful for some of the outputs that we are presenting here. Basically all the outputs and also the reports from the workshops are available in Zenodo. You can check in our community, easy to share. Also, we are going to share all these presentations. You can check all the links that we have here for the different documents. We are going to highlight during the presentations also the links to the documents. But basically, we did like a kind of path to achieve some of the documents that we are highlighting today. So the survey and the briefing document was really important to prepare the competence framework that we have proposed and delivered. And it was also really important for the good practices report that we did, like the workshops that we have organized, that some of you have contributed, and I suppose I think the majority from what we saw in the Mentimeter. And some of you that are here are also authors of the adoption handbook, and we know that some are already users, readers and users, and some of you will be also users of the adoption handbook in the near future. So these are the main results that we want to highlight to you. Everything was published. I think it was important to progress on this area. So what we need to ensure today is that we want to highlight the three main outputs that we did in 2021, the FAIR and data stewardship competence framework, and the body of knowledge, the draft that we have for that, by Yuri, and then by Claudia, how to be fair with your data, the teaching and training handbook for higher education institutions, and we will finalize with Federica, supporting fair competence education, the good practices from universities around Europe, the report that we also have delivered last December. So we have like 15 minutes plus discussion and questions from you for each part. This is the agenda of our meeting. So be sure that after each of this presentation, we have questions and answers. We have like 2 Mentimeters just to support the discussion, but you can reply to the Mentimeter and also put your questions. Let's do it interactive. Let's just revisit before I pass the floor to Yuri, and then also Yuri, Federica, and Claudia. You can present yourself a little bit better, just to avoid losing time with this. Just let's revisit just our Menti. If those that have already joined, you can access Menti. So the code is here, 57992305. We have already some people that have replied. Thank you very much for that. We have an idea about if you have already checked, access, read those deliverables, the FAIR competence framework, the FAIR adoption handbook, and the FAIR good practices report. So not a lot, from 1 to 3, but we have here an average that people are half of the people, let's say, are aware of these documents, which means that it's good to go into some details, but also to leave some time to discussion. So thank you for those that have already replied. I'm seeing some others replying to this Menti. I was trying just to achieve 50 replies. Feel free to reply because this is important, but I think it will not change the order. Just revisit the previous Mentimeter to be sure that we have from the 51 replies, 28 that have already joined previous workshops. So we have the type of audience that we also want, but we also want to have some newcomers. So it's great that you will be aware. I will keep this Mentimeter open, and I will pass the floor to Yuri. Thank you, Yuri, for being available to present. I will stop sharing my screen and feel free to start your presentation about the curricular framework that we have proposed to the community. And then we can have some discussion around what Yuri will present.
Okay, thank you for introduction, Pedro. You didn't say how much time do I have, but I remember that we discussed we need 10 minutes plus 5 minutes for discussion. Okay.
Yes, I mentioned 15 minutes in total, but so you can do it in 10.
Okay, I will try. Okay, so this was the first of deliverables in development of the work package 7. What presented, it was surely based on the review of existing resources on data, on stewardship, FAIR principle, and educational materials training. but it was first delivered that consolidated all development that existed at that time and pushed forward to defining the data stewardship and FAIR competences framework, which is currently with, okay, we will continue branding this as a CF-DSP, Data Stewardship Professional, and also followed for this is development of the Data Stewardship Professional Body of Knowledge. I will present very quickly results of this work, essential issues, how it was developed, that you know how you can use it, and if needed, you can return to the origin of this development. So first I will just refer that we used all existing at that time materials. This was first of all Edison Data Science Framework, what is a result of the Edison project in some years of 2015-17. And based on this, we extended the specific competences related to data stewardship and FAIR principle, mostly related to data management. You see this data science, data management part of competences and body of knowledge to make them more specifically reflecting data stewardship required competences. We did this based on job market analysis, and I will show you something what quite interesting, because we talk a lot about data stewardship in the research community, but business community, financial community, and government is looking for, searching for data stewards in a huge amount. So continuously you can find up to 50 vacancies for data stewards. And how the required competences for these positions, vacancies, I will show you in the diagrams. And we also used the recommendation of so-called DAMA body of knowledge. This is Data Management Association International, mostly oriented on business. And they actually already defined data steward as a profession already in 2007 in their first edition. And they also called that data stewards is not made but found. This means that it should be a naturally born talent. So somebody who wants to choose this profession is actually very demanded. It will be still many years in demand. So data steward is part of the organizational structure, general organizational as well as research organization. But surely the issues that were interesting for us is specifically how to define the competences of data steward that related to data management and also implementing FAIR data principles. And how much is these FAIR data principles are a match to the general data management, rely on the general data management skills. So we did this analysis. First time we did this snapshot on 2020, 2 years ago. And last year we did the more specific development to validate what we proposed and to make more specifically collected information, and also created a reference data set that other researchers in the future can develop the program for managing data steward competences in education and in, say, human resource management, because you understand this demand for data steward in research organization, business, finance, and whatever. This is issue that need to be managed and should be part of the quite specific functions of organizational human research, human resources department. So what we discovered, what kind of competences are required from vacancies, in the vacancies that we discovered. We discovered approximately in on the 30 vacancies was around 5-6 vacancies were from the research organization. So this is also high amount of vacancies that required by research organizations. And we discovered that the most demanded surely the part of related to data management. Another part is organizational features or business part of organization, of functions and knowledge and competences. And another part is engineering. This is knowing databases, knowing the tools that use data researchers and data stewards for managing their data. And actually, this is skills, competences. It is competences. This is skills, so experience. So people, the organization wants data stewards that have experience in data management, technical tools for data management, and also in business is definitely because very much data stewards works on the making the organizational data that are always specific, make them quality, make them whatever, fair. It's same simple. And this is knowledge what required from them. Means what require that a candidate has education in these areas, engineering, computer engineering, data management, research method, very highly ranked the knowledge topic, and business, also quite clearly understandable. So I would not be staying on this a list of specific knowledge items, topics that we discovered in the advertisement. And after that, all this was processed using also expert opinion, evaluation to provide extended list of competences. We use as a basic the ADSF, Edison Data Science Framework competences for data management, and extended them with specific competences for data stewards and for FAIR principles. So you see this quite significant extension. So this was a indication of the value of work was done. So we now better know what are data stewards from the point of view not only us researchers and developers of say the FAIR principle, data management tools and whatever, but from point of view of whole organizational structure. And this includes specific function like manage data steward team, develop organizational policy, coordinate activity for sustainable implementation of FAIR principle, and also specify requirement for organizational infrastructure for data management. So this is how data steward can be a key person in organization in data management. It's exactly what organizations are looking. Data steward should come to organization and define everything what needed, including to recommend management how to set up the FAIR, say, principle environment for data management. Data management, not only research data, but also organizational. Some kind of engineering tools we call data engineering that relates to knowledge of database system, knowledge of tools that are used. You can imagine how many tools the standard data steward and researcher need to manage data, need to manage metadata, publish them, also ensure the security, protection, access to data. So this is something, if we will educate or train the professional data stewards, all issues need to be included. And this diagram shows about that competence is always the core and beginning of all structure of education, resource management, career building, and so on. Next goes the body of knowledge. And body of knowledge is required to make either test program or certification or educational curriculum. And based on this, we actually defined extended, verified body of knowledge was developed for data scientists and especially it was a very serious contribution during the work on the FAIR adoption handbook. It was during the sprint, but it was continuing for 2 months, guided by Claudia. Claudia, I hope you will explain this huge and say titanic work that was done by a community of a group of experts. And this is currently available still on the old link, but it will be published on Zenodo, FAIRsFAIR, and also part of the Edison data science framework site. What I also want to say that we created a reference data set. Why is important? This reference data set, if somebody will work on different application of data steward management skills, curriculum, or whatever, they need to develop some tools. They need to have a reference set of vacancies, not like us repeating a couple of days or couple of weeks sitting on the say on the job sites and searching for jobs, verifying what is quality. And we created this reference data set. This is something what we are talking a lot of, that data set is also research product or scientific, product of research activity. And we did this positively, that this was done by my student assistant. And it was not easy. Everybody needs to pass through the stages of creating a publishing data set. Because many things need to be reviewed, especially metadata, consistency, files, directory structure. And what we did this, and next slide, this shows how this reference data steward vacancies looks like. So this just to, if I will increase, I don't know how will work you see, this part is a data management. You see, all candidates has a extended competences in this area. This area is research management, and this area is business orientation. Well, because majority of vacancies has a business oriented, so you see, they necessarily has a business understanding, business some kind of knowledge. But still, all data stewards that can be data managers, they can be data architects, they have extended, this is ranking of their skills in data stewardship. And research positions has also a requirement to know the research project, research process, research method, and so on. And my final slide is how to use all this data competence framework in body of knowledge. You can use this for designing your curriculum. And you use different components, competence framework, body of knowledge to design exactly what you want. And this is what competences you require from your staff or from your candidate. And this is what you will end at the end. Either you have academic curriculum or you have training program. You can create a team matching all candidates to the reference definition, the reference profile of data stewards, and combining them to cover all competences. And whatever, yes, this is what my final slide, and we can move to the discussion, question, and so on.
Great, Yuri. Many thanks. Yes, and this is the time for discussion. If then Yuri to reply to any question need to come up to the presentation, so you can do it. But I just will stop sharing your screen, and I will do it.
Yes, a simple request is share presentation. I can send directly to Richard, but if the organizers will make a
yes, we are going to share it in the website and send it via email also, but you can, if you want, you can do it directly here in the chat. So feel free to ask questions, okay? in the chat or just connect your audio. We have a question that in fact was already open during Yuri's presentation, is in fact, I think, the only question that we have for you to type, to write. So go to Menti, please. 57992305 and reply. Let me open that. And in fact, already here some comments. You can put other questions if you want, if you wish. Just raise your hand. I will try to pay attention here to if you want to ask question or not. Feel free to open your audio and ask the question. If you want to also to write it, you can do it. We have this question here in the Multimeter just to, because it was something that we wanted to discuss. We know that the framework it's complex. It's hard for this first approach to do it in a concise way. So it's complex. It's complete. It's very good stuff that we have here, I think. How should we make it more simple to support its implementation in university training activities, in university curricula, etc.? So Yuri, feel free to comment. And of course, the other speakers, also Federic and Claudia and myself, we are free to jump in and to share some thoughts if needed. But I think we have already interesting comments here from those simple ones, like provide flowcharts, provide explanation videos, which is something interesting to make it more like interactive in the multimedia resource, let's say, provide use cases and tools if available. But we have here the first two was, I think that the translation work we did in the handbook is actually quite useful, defining which stage of research a student, PhD, etc., should know something. I think it's you are right, and it's true. It's well documented also in the handbook, which I think it's very useful. I was able to use this translated framework from the handbook as a basis when designing a data management course for information science bachelor students. So it seems to work. Okay, very good. We have already an example of a use case, let's say, construct and standardized framework and adapt it on the European and United States level and then the international level. Create an ISO standard for data steward. Okay, great. Interesting.
I want to add
challenge.
to this.
Yes.
I want to add this. Actually, there is European framework called taxonomy for occupations, skills, and whatever, ESCO.
Yes.
And there is a data steward there also, but their definition is just a couple of lines. So really we need to some kind of community efforts to make this standardized and distribute, widely used.
Thank you. So there are comments here interesting, like the provide H4 page guide resource, quick start page, and good table of contents brought through the info of interest. One single page guide. Where do I start? What resources are relevant for me? All on one. So I think this is interesting suggestions. Hard to achieve, but interesting suggestion. I think it was a little bit the approach we tried to follow in this simple pages here, trying to make it simple with some graphics from some of the outputs. This was the idea. We know that we produce it. Usually we produce like 100 or more pages report. In the web pages supported by the communication team, we did some interesting stuff here to make it more simple. But I can imagine this is quite challenging to do it for the framework. But I think it's interesting suggestion. We can check what we can do. More comments. Adding data literacy and digital literacy to universities training activities. Okay, using this also guiding framework. Emphasize path for different categories of trainees and skills category. Maybe having training informative materials with different levels and difficulty. First, tag which program study you would like to implement the topics of the framework. Example in business, informatics, or engineering bachelor degree. Okay. Okay. There are also some comments about great work on the framework. Compliments to Yuri also here, which is really good to hear. Okay, let's come up. Okay, thank you very much for your contributions, for more training with practical situation examples. I think so already Yuri already mentioned something, and also these comments made here, the first comments about what is available in the handbook. One of the things that we thought, I think it's quite useful, is the body of knowledge. There is a table, and it's in fact an appendix in the handbook, summarizing that, presenting that. We discussed it last week, Claudia. We didn't discuss it with you, but in fact we discussed it in this process of preparing the Git book, that we will talk about that later. We realized that maybe it's interesting to put that specific body of knowledge, not only the PDF with the table, but also the spreadsheet that we prepared, available in Zenodo. So maybe people can download the spreadsheet and adapt to their own needs and to their own so implementation use cases in their universities. I hope that you agree on that. I'm putting this publicly, but I think it's a good idea if we can create as another record with this PDF and the spreadsheet available for all to reuse, because the body of knowledge is in fact something quite interesting. Is just a part of the framework, just dedicated to some contents, but I think it will be useful.
Yeah, thanks, Pedro. I indeed had someone email me and asking exactly this. Can you provide this in like a different format than just the PDF?
Yes.
Yeah.
We discussed it last week after in that meeting that you leave a bit early. So sorry for that. But I'm being open and presenting this to the community. I think we are going to do that within this process of preparing the Git book. So with you. So let's do it, and then we can share the link with all of you. I think this will be interesting because we have, so Claudia, we have a spreadsheet that I suppose will be quite useful for people. Okay, any other comments? So then we can move to the next presentation. Yuri, many thanks. Do you want to add some final comments to this comments made here in the Menti? So several ones, I think they are all good suggestions. Do you want?
Actually, I understand that indeed this is indeed complex, but what we are doing and what I'm doing is my student assistant, we are providing more or less kind of structured recommendations and examples and tools. This is it. So a place where we publish this, there is a community, a Edison community website that maintains all issues related to the Edison Data Science Framework, and all development follow after this, including the Data Stewardship Competence Framework and Data Stewardship Body of Knowledge. I will put a link into a chat. This is for future that you will find there is some more reference. Actually, link provided in the presentation. If it will be published, you will find also. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Yuri. We can check some more comments at the end, but now let's move to the second part. Claudia, the floor is yours. Let's hear about this great success that we achieved with this handbook and the great work that all the authors did. But of course, Claudia was spectacular to guide these people for this, to have this achievement. Okay, Claudia, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Pedro.
Working.
Okay, I have my slides up now.
Yes.
And I want to give you a brief overview again. So some of you know the handbook already, which is great. We have some newcomers who are not that familiar yet. So I'm happy to give you a brief overview of the work that we did and the content of the handbook. So just a brief overview of the content. So I will talk a bit about the background and creation of the handbook, then the components, and I have one concluding slide regarding the future or potential future of the handbook. So, how to be fair with your research data, a teaching and training handbook for HEIs, meaning higher education institutions. And the main purpose of this document is really to provide guidance and practical support to staff members of higher education institutions with integrating the FAIR principles and content related to the FAIR principles into curricula and teaching for all kinds of disciplines and and different levels. So bachelor, master, and PhD level. So far, it has been published as a project deliverable on Zenodo in December 2021. So the creation of this handbook was, quite a large effort, a large collaborative effort involving really a number of enthusiastic community members, which was a great experience. So the initial series of events for the creation of the handbook was a series of 6 3-hour book sprints in June 2001. About 40 collaborators came together. This is including the FAIRsFAIR people that were also involved. And all were experts in terms of research data management and FAIR with diverse disciplinary backgrounds. After the book sprints, of course, we had to do some further work and editing still. And this subsequent editorial process was led by an editorial team of, I think in the end, 8 people. We did present the first draft of the handbook to the community to gather feedback on it in August and September 2001. And we actually did get quite a lot of feedback, which was great. And thereupon revised the draft, presented the revised draft at another workshop to get some more feedback, and finalized the document to publish it in December. So in addition to the project deliverable that is already available, there will be a Gitbook version provided or created by the colleagues from the University of Minho, which will be published by the end of February. And we also have a print edition in preparation that will be published sometime in spring 2021. And if you look here, just a quick note on this graphic here, this is a map with pins of some of the with the locations of some of the book sprint collaborators. So we were from different countries and regions of the world. So I already mentioned the aim of the handbook is to support university staff members or higher education institution staff members with the integration of the FAIR principles into teaching. So the primary target audience also come from this area. And there are 4 main groups. Or these can be categorized into 4 main groups. So people who create and teach lessons and courses. Then we also have staff members who design, adapt, and implement curricula. We have other staff members, training and consulting PhD students and early career researchers. And then we have people on the management level who have to take care of the implementation of FAIR and institutional strategies, policies, workflows, etc. So these are the primary target audiences, but this does not mean, of course, that the handbook cannot be of use to other people groups as well. So for example, library staff training researchers, or trainers at research institutions, everyone involved in research data management, and the FAIR principles in some way can, I think, benefit from the handbook. So what is the contents? There are 6 chapters, but the main chapters are actually chapter 3 to 4. So we have one part that deals with FAIR skills and competences. Then we have one part that gives information on teaching and training designs. We have the big part, FAIR lesson plans here, providing 16 lesson plans on different topics. And finally, there's a chapter on implementing FAIR on the institutional level. And I will briefly give a bit more information on each of these 4 areas in the following. So the FAIR skills and competences, this work was done based on the competence framework that Yuri introduced just now. And in particular, the body of knowledge that came with it. We had to adapt it, of course, for our purpose. So the main difference, or the main difference in focus, is really that the competence framework is focusing on data-related professions, so data science, data stewardship, and so forth. Whereas our focus was on students of all kinds of disciplines. And of course, the skills and competences and the extent to which knowledge or in these is required differs in this respect. And so, yeah, there was quite some work done, but we finally were able to come up with FAIR competence profiles for 3 educational levels, so to speak, so for the bachelor, master, and doctoral level. And also corresponding learning outcomes for each of these competences. And this looks a little like this. So this is just a screenshot from the handbook, the competence profile table. So you see here the different levels: bachelor, master, PhD level. And then you have a list of competences here. This is, of course, in reality much longer. And it's specified to which extent a bachelor student, for example, shall be familiar with this competence. And then accordingly for the master and PhD level. And there is another column here saying, oh, is this entry-level content or not? And in terms of the learning outcomes, what you will find in the handbook, in the main part of the handbook, are tables like this for each the bachelor, master, and doctoral level, where you here find the competence or the topic again, and then the level to which this is required. And here you can see, okay, what are the concrete learning outcomes for this competence? So meaning, what does a student who attended this course, this unit, whatever, need to know, or what does a student know after attending this? And these are also divided into basic, intermediate, and advanced learning outcomes. Right, so the next chapter is on teaching and training designs. And these are organized along the phases of course design. And there's information on selecting and identifying learning outcomes, then on developing learning experiences, which means different forms of teaching. So for example, a lecture, a workshop, and so forth. There's information on how to select content, how to develop assessments, and how to evaluate course effectiveness. Then finally, the lesson plans. So we have 16 of them. I'd like to note that this is not an exhaustive list. We did what was in our capacity and what the book sprint participants felt like contributing to or contributing. So these are the topics that we have covered. There are 16 in total. Yeah, and it would be worthwhile in the future to add more topics, of course, but let's get to that later. So I'm not going to read the list now, but we do have quite a few there already. So the lesson plans all follow the same structure. There is first a list of the FAIR elements that are concerned with regard to this topic. The audiences are specified, or the primary audiences. Then the learning outcomes. Then there is a summary of tasks and actions that actually can be or are suggested for a lesson or unit on this. The materials and equipment that are needed. There's a reference section, and not all plans have this, but most of them do, a take-home task or take-home tasks. This is an example. This is a short one, the lesson plan and documentation. Most of the other plans are longer, so I chose this because it fits nicely onto one slide. So here you see again, but I'm going to go quickly through this, the FAIR elements, the learning outcomes, summary of tasks and actions, a reference section, and an exercise. So, and in the chapter on implementing FAIR, finally, we talk about FAIR institutional policies, data management planning, data processing and documentation, the support infrastructure, data publication and data reuse, and different aspects relating to these topics when it comes to, okay, implementing this at your institution. So this is, or was a brief summary of the content of the handbook. So what's the future of the handbook? We will have the Gitbook version published soon, hosted by the University of Minho. There will be a print, sorry, the words escapes me, publication, and also open access PDF publication with Göttingen University Press. But one question that we have discussed initially, but is still open to some extent is, okay, what is the future of the handbook? So luckily, so far, I must say, we did have quite a lot of positive feedback on the handbook, and some people told us that they were already using it, and then that they did see potential for it, to use it in their own teaching and so forth. But of course, this is a product that was created within a project, and the project is ending in 2 weeks. So the question is, okay, who is going to maintain and probably update this in the future? One thing in this regard I'd like to mention is that we have the Gitbook version, which I think facilitates a relatively easy opportunity or option to update the content in terms of the technical environment. But of course, the content update and revision and so forth does have to be, or is more extensive. So we did approach community initiatives regarding this, to ask them if they want to, if this is something that they want to take up and maybe work on in the future. Discussions are still ongoing, but we did approach, for example, the open air community of practice, who was not, or who was interested, but still has to discuss this in detail. And I think the RDA group on education and training for research data is also a forum that this could be a good fit with. But as I said, yeah, we will have to see. It's difficult to make commitments without actually having funds for this. Okay,
Okay.
Thank you very much. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them now, or you can also contact me later. Pedro, shall I?
Yes, so it's great. I can. Yes, I can start. Feel free to ask questions, to turn on your audio if you wish.
I'll turn mine on.
And of course, also join the Mentimeter. I'm going to also put it in the chat for all. It will be great if you can also reply to this question that we have here in the chat. Do you consider that the handbook will be a useful resource to support the development of training on RDM and FAIR data in your institution? Yes, if everything that we have in the handbook is useful and you plan to use it, is in fact you are already using it in any particular event or activity, and it will be interesting also if you can share. If you don't want to turn on your radio, we can also put in the chat the example of the way that you are using it. Maybe you need to know more about it, and Claudia have already detailed a bit, but you can access and know a bit more about it, or it will be difficult to implement, to use it in any particular training. So many thanks for all these replies. Okay, great. 36.
Yeah.
Claudia, any comments about this?
So it's good to see that many of you think that this would be a useful resource, and some are already using it. Some want to know more about it. There are actually 2 people who said, "Ooh, it's going to be difficult to implement." It would be interesting to know if they would like to share, to know. So if there's a specific aspect that they think is difficult, or if they want to elaborate on this, but they don't have to, of course, openly if they don't want to. So
okay, any comment from you? It will be great if we can have some more answers. So you are here with us, just join the Menti and provide some replies. Usually we have 50, 52, 53 people replying. So if you can access your Menti and access your browser or your mobile phone and reply, it will be also interesting for us to be aware of that. Anyone that in fact are already using it want to share an example just with us? Then to move to the other questions, we have one more question about the handbook. It will be good if someone want to say something. If not, just put it in the chat. Yes, Anna Petrus, please. Feel free to jump in and to share your thought. Thank you for.
Hello.
Hello.
So can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect, Anna.
Okay, so I was actually one of those who said that yes, and in fact we actually are already using it. Well, I could start to do so because I was actually also one of the authors of the book sprint, but this is why I could implement it so early. But today we started a new course on data management in the Bachelor of Information Science at our university. It's the University of Applied Sciences in Grisons in Switzerland. And we teach information scientists also how to be able to support researchers and how to teach them future FAIR skills. And now we have this new course where we teach them data management first and the skills they need to know to further teach the researchers or other trainers. So that's the idea. And I found while preparing the course that actually this body of knowledge and the handbook we created, and especially this table, although it was huge and complex, it actually helped when preparing the course to not forget things, to just keep in mind what I need to put into the curriculum and to try and adapt it to our needs. So that was very helpful.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna. I think, and also an interesting example that reply also to some of the comments of the framework. So having this kind of so easy to use tables and resources, even if they are long, are interesting in the moment of planning. So another question here, and thank you all for those that have replied to the previous question. So which resources of the handbook do you think it will be the most useful for you in the future work? So what are those things that you have already checked? So I know that we have some people here that didn't have the possibility to check the full structure of the document, but in fact you already heard a bit from Claudia. So what are your comments about this? So let's see if some more people reply. Which resources of the handbook? I'm going also to reply. So Claudia, feel free to comment.
Yeah.
Lessons plans are the one.
Yeah,
Which was I think expected, because it's really an interesting resource available in the handbook. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's just have some more replies. But any comment? Are you surprised, Claudia, or not?
No, but actually, yeah, sorry. I think we haven't.
Maybe I can say something.
Yeah, Britta, please.
Yes,
Claudia. Yeah, I would just support Anna, and what you can also see here, I'm also using the learning outcomes a lot. Yeah. At home, but also in collaborating with others to discuss, what do we want to create when we're talking about new materials or something like that. So that's very helpful.
Yeah. That's good. Thank you, Britta. Thanks. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we. So if someone else want to add replies to this meant, it will be useful for us. But I think we have a very good representation. So in fact, yes, mainly lessons plans and learning outcomes. So, and yes, to prepare the training programs, I think this will be also useful for that. What Anna said, that is guide us through the preparation of courses, and the lessons learned provide us some very good examples that to make our life more easy to prepare a course. So final comment from you in order to pass the word to Federica, that is already waiting for me. I told Federica that I will pass the floor to Federica at 35 minutes past 3, so I'm already late. Okay. 1 minute, only 1 minute, Federica. Any final comment, Claudia?
Well, thanks to everyone, the ones that are here, but also the ones that are not here, who took part in this endeavor and contributed to the handbook, especially the book sprint participants, of course, but also all the people who gave feedback and so forth. That was really great to have so many people involved and interested in this. Yeah, and I hope it's going to be useful to many of you in the future. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Federica, the floor is yours to present the good practices report for us. Okay.
Thank you, Pedro, and welcome everybody. Okay, I managed to share my presentation. So my name is Federica Garbuia, and I'm Policy and Project Officer at the European University Association. And today I'm going to talk about the last deliverable of the day, but also of the Work Package 7 of FAIRsFAIR, which is the Good Practices report, as we call it, which is actually titled Good Practices in Fair Competence Education. So the report presents a collection of 7 case studies which highlight institutional initiatives and training and teaching activities related to teaching RDM and fair data skills at the institutional level. And it was published last December, in December 2021, together with the Adoption Handbook. And in fact, we see this deliverable as a complementary tool to the Adoption Handbook. If on the one side, the Adoption Handbook provides universities with practical material to start integrating fair data-related skills in higher education programs. The good practice report offer, of course, examples and also a point of view from the other universities that are already providing this type of activities and training and their lesson learned with their experiences. I placed in this slide the DOI of the document, and also just if some of you already downloaded it in these past 2 months of in this first 2 months of this publication, just to let you know that we have now a new, say, nicely designed version by our colleagues from the FAIRsFAIR project that it's already available for download. So just a few words about the background, because I think it's important to understand why this tool is a practical tool for universities and can be of interest to them. Through different work done both within the FAIRsFAIR project, but also within EUA, we saw how currently there is a substantial gap between the strategic importance that is attributed to RDM and FAIR data and their implementation, which is still lagging behind in different universities in Europe. This is due mostly because of a lack of awareness, especially among researchers, doctoral candidates, and students on what are the FAIR data and how they can be applied, and also, of course, a lack of skills and training at all levels. It was really interesting to see that in the survey report we published with the FAIRsFAIR project in 2020, also universities said that they needed practical guidance on how to sustain and support the application of FAIR data skills and principles in order to also support the emergence of this type of practices at the institutional level. So with this background in mind, really, we hope that the report will represent a practical tools for universities to start embedding FAIR data education in their programs and doctoral training. Also because, as we will see, we try to came up with some recommendations for university on to achieve so, but also provide inspiration on how to start new training programs, how to address potential implementation challenges, how to ensure sustainability. Of course, inspiration coming from other universities that are already providing this type of training to their students and the researchers. The methodology, well, we chose these good practices because they were presented in a series of university workshops that we organized within the FAIRsFAIR project, and also it was a series that Fredo was mentioning at the start of this event, so probably many of you took part to these events. And then we organized follow-up interviews with representative of these good practices to discover more and discuss more about their experience. These interviews were focusing on 4 main macro areas that you see here in this slide, which are also the, let's say, 4 main pillars that we use in the report to present the results. We have scope and objectives, so the drivers behind the good practices. Capacity, meaning the staff involved in the training, but also the sources of funding used to start the training. Implementation, so potential challenges and steps to follow a smooth implementation, and the impact, so both evaluation process, but also next steps and also advice from this university on how to support the long-term impact of the results achieved. In these slides, you can see an overview of the 7 good practices that you will find in the report. We have 5 cases from Europe, because we have then 2 cases from Portugal, and also we have 1 case from, say, to give an international perspective from the University of Cape Town, because we really thought it was important also to include and see how these issues related to the lack of skills and training related to FAIR, it's not an issue that just regards countries and universities in Europe. And something that I think it's interesting to mention regarding this slide is the type of initiatives, because we, when we chose the good practices, we thought it was interesting not to just present, let's say, more traditional courses focused on teaching RDM and FAIR data, but we saw that there were a diverse set of initiatives that were being created by universities. For example, we have the example of TU Wien, which also developed an institutional unit entirely dedicated to RDM, or the UBREME Research Alliance, which developed a regional-based training program for data science and RDM. And also the examples of Swiss universities, the Swiss National Rectors Conference, which created a national funding scheme to support universities in developing their institutional activities on teaching FAIR data skills. So really we saw that when we talk about FAIR data education, there is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and that universities can create and think about different initiatives that can be developed, also starting from different provision of staff available to do the training, and also of different sources of funding available in the institution. Yes, main findings. I try to highlight a few of the most interesting findings that we present in the report, and again through the 4 main areas that we analyzed. Regarding scope and objectives, something that we saw is really that there is a duplicity of internal versus external factors, drivers, behind the decision to implement FAIR data training and teaching. Internal factors are, for example, related to the fact that more and more universities are now implementing policies that try to regulate RDM and FAIR data, and if not mandating the creation of FAIR data, at least encouraging researchers to comply with the FAIR data principles. And of course, this means that it was needed for university to ensure that the researchers, the doctoral candidates, and also the students were able to have the skills to comply with the objectives of the institutional policies. External drivers, of course, relates to policies at the national and European level, but also to funding requirements for FAIR data and in general for RDM that are now more and more common, both among national funders, but also at the European level. So, for example, thinking about Horizon Europe requirements. Regarding the implementation, we saw that there is an important combination between top-down and bottom-up approaches, and in particular, this combination is very important to ensure that the good practice, the training in this case, is implemented and in a smooth way. For example, we saw in many of our case studies that the initiatives to create the new training came from members of the staff, and in particular at the practitioner level from members of the library, of the research support staff, that decided to create a new training activity or a new initiatives at the institutional level. And of course, these bottom-up, let's say, drivers are really important, but to be implemented, then they have to be met with a leadership that is able and also willing to sustain these bottom-up activities and provide top-down support. Regarding capacity, something that was mentioned in more than one good practice was the importance of having dedicated funding and dedicated staff that would follow the training related to research data management, but also the activities related to the sharing and managing of FAIR data. Of course, this is not possible in all institutions, and but something that we saw it would be important is to highlight that even the investment of a limited amount of seed funding can be scaled up in the long term and ensure like the benefits and also the results of the training activities. And last but not least, regarding the impact, we saw that it's interesting and also resourceful to connect FAIR data skills and practices priorities with other priorities in the national and institutional agendas. I mentioned here the examples of research ethics and integrity and also digitalization, because this is something that we saw in the case studies. For example, regarding research ethics and integrity, the Tampere universities that we interviewed, they decided to include in their mandatory course on research ethics and integrity also some basic skills regarding FAIR data and RDM. And in this way, they ensure that all doctoral researchers, at least once in their doctoral career, could familiarize with these topics. And regarding digitalization, we have to remind that right now FAIR research data are not just, let's say, a priority if we think about open science, but also an important step in the transition to digitalization. So there might now be sources of funding and in general support provided if we see FAIR data in this framework. And this is, for example, the case from the research data management MOOC that was developed by the University of Minho with the support of the National Ministry in an initiative related to digitalization. Last point is about the recommendation, and here you see the 3 recommendations that we provided in the report. The first one relates to the importance of fostering the engagement of the research and support staff, but also of members of the library, as I was mentioning before, to foster their engagement and in particular to provide them with opportunities to build capacity across all institutional level, also allowing them to bring the knowledge they have regarding FAIR data management outside, let's say, the library walls. And here it's very interesting to mention something that was said by one of our interviewees that said that we should reach to a situation in which all members of the university community is able to manage data in a fair and responsible way. Then we also saw that it's important to connect and develop policies, infrastructure, and skill training, because these are 3 main pillars of a strategy related to supporting and enhancing fair data education in universities. For example, a university can have all the right policies to regulate fair data management and the right infrastructures, but then if the skills are not there among especially researchers and doctoral candidates and students, then it's not possible to support the implementation of fair data practices. Similarly, we can have policies and the skills, but then if we don't have the infrastructures, we never reach to an optimal situation that allows us to fill the gap that I was mentioning at the start between strategies and implementation related to fair data. Last but not least, we saw that it's interesting to be aware of opportunities at the European and national levels and integrate them in institutional strategies. So this again relates to the importance of finding synergies with other institutional and national strategies, but also with realizing that there are now more and more policies at the national level and also the European level that provide support for universities to start implementing fair data skills at the institutional level. And this support might be in a few lesser cases financial support, but in general there are a lot of policy guidance that can be used then internally to define objectives and a clear strategy to support the implementation and support new opportunities for fair data teaching and training. So this was a very brief overview of the whole report, which again you can find on Zenodo. And I'm here available to answer to your own question and also to discuss with the Menti question the good practice report. Thank you very much.
Great, Federica. Many thanks. I think it was a very good presentation, so quite clear. And now that we have, let's say, a more appealing report with this interesting version also made available, which I think it's very good. So for sure there are experiences to share, feel free. So let me share the screen. So just to share the results from Menti, that in fact it's already, some people have already provided some replies, so feel free to access the Menti and provide your comments. Is already also contribution here from Maggie, training and competence building on fair and open science and related research data management technologies as needed for all staff and student categories is good, but unless there are easy to use and free resources for cataloging, curation and long-term storage for data, Europe won't be able to take the big leap towards a new data society. Great, important statement from Maggie, which I must say that I agree. Sometimes we have this, we do great training and we have the barrier that, okay, where are the services and the tools and the infrastructures? Okay, we have almost 30 replies to this question. So Federica, feel free to comment. I think we have already a good number to come up with some conclusions. I must say that I think the first 10 replies, all those first 10 have selected lack of staff and then different other options, but we have lack of staff and lack of funding to cover costs as in the top 2, but we also have that some mentions that fair data is not yet a priority in the institution, and some also mentioned the lack of resources. But having in mind that we have all these resources that we have presented and others, so there are some resources that can contribute materials, at least support. Of course, we need other kinds of resources also. But the lack of staff, so train people, prepare people to do this training is already an important. So feel free to comment. Stephanie also made a comment related to what Maggie said. How to avoid that each institution reinvents the wheel regarding training materials as well as the infrastructure. Okay.
Yeah, I think that in this part it's really important also to provide more and more of this opportunity to exchange good practices and provide peer learning opportunities across universities to discover how other institutions are working on this, what are the resources that they are putting on these issues, and what are the different institutional practices also across different universities and countries.
Yeah, many thanks.
Yeah, I also noticed, also very much agree with this comment made by Maggie now in the.
Yes, about the senior.
And actually, sorry,
stuff.
because I was just thinking that one of the good related to Maggie's comments, one of the good practices when we asked them about the next step was to provide training specifically to senior researchers, senior management, and also thesis supervisor, because I said that they saw that there was still a lack of knowledge also about the motives to why it's important to fair data and why it's important to share data. Of course, not to go into the open side of data sharing, but it's maybe sometimes we focus too much on the doctoral candidates, on the students, but it's really more and more opportunities should be provided also to discuss these issues with senior researchers and senior advisors.
Okay, it will be also interesting to use this last 3, 4, 5 minutes to check if there is any other, for sure there is any other good practice that can be part of this can be part of this report. You can say yes, but you can also identify so like your institution or something that we are doing at the national or institutional level. So feel free to share these examples, because I think it will be also interesting. And please, so we want to close on time, but we have some time to 2 or 3 comments, short comments. So feel free to share your thoughts. So we are all here, I think, with this +1 for targeting senior researchers, which is critical and is usually something that is quite usually mentioned. We also did a survey in On Merit project. On Merit, it's another European project that will, in fact, is coming to an end. We also contribute to a survey assessing training activities in open science training related activities in institutions, and the lack of senior researchers participating in some of those training activities was also mentioned several times. Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to share some thoughts? I think we can close on time, but we already have some good examples here. If someone want to share using the audio, feel free. But I think there are some institutions, some colleagues here participating in this workshop that have other initiatives to share. So some not yet, so they are preparing. Yes, but it's all on the shoulder of only one person. Okay, I suppose that you have replied that the lack of staff is something critical in your institution. Yes, we offer trainings for PhDs, lectures, technical, and also administrative staff. The FAIR principles are tackled in different courses and training programs, especially those related to doctoral studies and research practices. Okay, yes, basic understanding of FAIR principles. There are some courses on open access and open data, but very general, not this level. For information sciences students, it's part of the curriculum, okay, but they don't teach it to the staff researchers, okay. Good examples in PhD course is more generic training, but already some things related with the FAIR principles, okay. Maggie, okay, +1 for Maggie, not Maggie, okay. In the chat, more comments. Federica, any comment about this interesting other kinds of activities that in fact some people are developing in their institutions, and some examples that are in fact related with what we have in the report?
Yeah, very briefly, I think it also reflects a little bit what we present in the report also. Now looking at the examples, I see that still this type of training is not well provided, if not at all at the bachelor level. And this is also something that we were not able to add, like to provide a case studies on the bachelor level. We have one on the master level in the report, but still we really tried to also focus the discussion on also how it's important to start teaching this to students at the very early levels, so that maybe then it can be also addressed in different types of with this different level of knowledge in the while the students goes ahead with this academic career. So I think that also the question of teaching bachelor students will have to be raised in the future. But in general, I think these are very interesting, and also it's positive to see that at least more and more initiatives are arising in different in different universities in Europe and outside Europe. Just that one thing I wanted to again also thank you, the contributors to the good practice report who we interviewed. Also, I saw that there were some of them in the audience today. So I think that they provided very interesting and insightful reflection on their experience.
Okay, great. And that was in fact the idea of this workshop. So some mentions to training materials that are already prepared, some guides, also some open science cafes that are organized. So we can conclude with these examples. I'm part of a team teaching introductory data management to graduated students at my university. So most have never thought about this before. So I think this is a very good example for the importance that we may expose with these activities and these results that we have here. So I think we are coming to the end of this workshop. Just let me check if there is something relevant. Okay, thank you for your comments also here in the chat. It's always good to have these parallel discussions in the chat. So our intention was to keep it short, 1.5 hours. I think we achieved that. Thanks. We are closing, so expect to have the information and these recordings and the presentations available in the website. If you go to the events menu, you will see it. We are going to send you via email that information, okay, when it's published. We are going to use your contacts to provide you that information. Federica, so this is the final event of our team in FAIRsFAIR. So it was a great pleasure, and I think it was really useful to have all the contributions. So we saw here some people that have contributed to the best practices report, to the handbook. People also saying thanks to the fact that we have now a framework, something to use. So I think it was a kind of community-driven approach and to community-driven activity, and I think it's visible in this workshop also. So many thanks to all, and expect an email from us with all the outputs. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And thank you, Pedro, for moderating today's session.
Yeah, thank you all for your